Welcome to TalkNorth.com. Thanks to our longtime producer, Brandon Morton. Please download before you listen. If you'd like to advertise with us, you can reach us at talknorthpodcast@gmail.com. And please follow us on Twitter at TalkNorthPod. Two promo codes to be aware of. BiteSquad.com. Use the promo code TalkNorth to get your first delivery free. And go to SodaStick.com, the great local apparel company. Use the promo code YouBetcha to get free shipping on any sized order.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Turn this thing up. Let's do this.
Always passionate, always fiery. You're listening to the Strom Sports Show. Take it away, Steven.
It's nice to have you with us today on the Strom Sports Show. Steven Strom here, TalkNorth.com. Big shout out to my producer, Brandon Morton, Jim Suhan, and my video editor, Matt Augusta. We got a action-packed show for you today. We've got Negative Dave. He's back, and he's better than ever after a Twins win on Thursday night. That was huge. Now, we recorded on Wednesday night. That was after the sweep of the New York Mets. They came in here and just took it to the Twins. So Dave was obviously not happy, so we'll play that. We have that for you. We also have Brian Windhorst of ESPN, yes, on the jump, on Pardon the Interruption. Obviously a prominent name, one of my probably biggest guests of the show. He'll come on, he'll talk about free agency. I had to throw in a little Timberwolves with him, but for the most part, it's a lot of the NBA stuff that's went on in this offseason. And let's be honest here, the Wolves had very little to do with that. Also want to get into a little Gophers, Media Day was on Thursday. I'm very excited for this season. I think they've got a good chance here to win 8 or 9 games. They don't have a crazy tough schedule. They've got a bunch of guys coming back, so I'm very excited about that. We start here today, though, with a little segment for you guys, and that is the Strom Stress Meter. Okay, I picked 3 coaches here that are under some stress, and I will rank that stress 1 to 10, and I'll explain to you why here. Okay, so let's begin with Kevin Stefanski, the offensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings in year 2 now. Now, Kevin Stefanski, to me, is at an 8.3 in terms of pressure scale because he understands, first of all, I think there's a couple of factors that play into this. Number one is that Gary Kubiak was brought in. Now, Gary Kubiak is a Super Bowl winner. He obviously was the offensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos when they had John Elway in 98 and 99 when they won the title. And I think that there is some form of pressure because Gary Kubiak is now the quarterback coach, and I would say Kevin Stefanski, if he had gotten fired or if he gets fired, Gary Kubiak is the next guy up. So I think number one is you look behind you if you're Kevin Stefanski and you see a guy in Gary Kubiak that's a proven Super Bowl champ and has worked with great quarterbacks. That's number one. Now, one of the biggest downfalls for the Vikings in 2018 was their offense, right? They averaged 24.5 points per game in the first 9 weeks, which is very good, and you notice, and this was the biggest problem with the Vikings last year, is that they could never get the offense and the defense on the same end of the spectrum. It was constantly, okay, the offense plays great, and then the defense is terrible, or the defense is great and the offense is terrible. So the first 9 weeks, the Vikings offense averaged 24.5 points per game. After that, the Vikings averaged 15 points per game in their first 4 weeks after the bye week. And then obviously we know what happened. As a result, the offensive coordinator, John DeFilippo, was fired, and then Kevin Stefanski came in, and he eventually was promoted to the full-time offensive coordinator this season. We got a small taste in what could be on the table in the first 3 games, in the final 3 games of last season with Stefanski. You saw he featured Dalvin Cook a little more. The running game was more prominent. He used more play-action passes to help Kirk Cousins behind a very suspect offensive line. Now, the offense obviously struggled in the finale against the Bears, but Stefanski did do some nice things against the Dolphins and the Lions where he thought, okay, he's got something. So I think that there is a lot of pressure on Stefanski because this is year 2 of Kirk Cousins, and there's no excuse. If the Vikings don't make the playoffs this year, you can give me, okay, first year Kirk Cousins, they struggled, couldn't get on the same page. There is zero excuse for year 2 in this regime. You cannot screw this one up. And I do think that even though I went on and I said that he's going to have a little pressure because Kubiak's behind him, I think Kubiak is going to help him. I think Rick Dennison is going to help them as a new offensive line coach. You mix in a couple of new additions with Garrett Bradbury, with Irv Smith Jr., and this could be an offense that is a lot better than last year. And I think the biggest part about this year is being consistent. You don't have to average 30 points a game to win because of the defense you have. You have to be consistent with your points, though. You have to say 20 to 23 points per game. I mean, you got to be able to put that up there with your rich quarterback that you brought in here to get to the Super Bowl, get to that next level. Now, training camp is going to be huge, right? Because Stefanski is going to get a full season with Kirk Cousins and the offense. He's going to have to work with Diggs and Thielen. I don't think Diggs and Thielen are going to have as big of a year, but I think that Kevin Stefanski, he has to perform, because if the Vikings start 0-4, just say worst case scenario, which I don't think they're going to do, but just say for the argument's matter that the Vikings start off 0-4. Stefanski is probably gone, right? Especially, I mean, you consider, unless the Vikings offense is putting up 30 points per game and they're losing, Kevin Stefanski is gone, and Gary Kubiak is up. I think that he's on a tighter leash than a lot of people think, and that's why I have him at an 8.3 in terms of pressure. Okay, so that's number one. Number two here is the Twins front office. This, to me, is a 7.8, and it would be higher if there was the expectation coming into this year that this was a World Series team, but I think because no one thought the Twins would be in this position, and no one thought the Twins would be legitimate contenders this late in the season, that I have to lay off a little on the numbers in terms of pressure. Now that they're here, I do think there is some added pressure to make a move, to not be that guy that sits there in October and says, oh man, what if we went and got Bumgarner? What if we got Marcus Stroman? What if we went out and got one more bullpen guy? So I think that this is at a 7.8. This is on a 7.8 on my Strom scale of stress. Derek Falvey and Thad Levine need to do something bold at the trade deadline. I mean, I read Chip Scoggins' article on the Star Tribune. He's 100% right. The team deserves this. The fan deserves this. And this isn't in one of these moments where don't just tweak to the bullpen. Don't make some minor move involving a so-so reliever. Do something major that instantly makes this team stronger. The bullpen hasn't been a complete disaster, but the bar must be higher than it has been because the expectations has changed, and we understand what you need in October. Pitching wins you World Series. That's the name of the game. That's what it's been. If you don't have a great starting pitching rotation, then you've got a great bullpen, or vice versa. We saw it with the Astros. You saw it with the Royals. You saw it with the Red Sox. There's no secret to this. So I think that the front office is under a lot of pressure, especially if they don't go out and they get a free and they don't make a trade. Because just say, like, if I'm Falvey and I'm Levine, I'm making a trade regardless because it's a win-win. If you don't win the World Series, then you can't hear people complain and say, well, they didn't make a move. Oh, well, they sat. Oh, they were cheap. They were too cheap. They didn't make a move. And if you win, you look like a genius because you go out and you got your guy. You got a big signing at the trade deadline. It is such a lose-lose if you don't make a trade here. Because God forbid you don't get to the ALCS or you don't get to a World Series. Honestly, like, my expectation for the Twins is to win the first round. I mean, you have to win the first round. If you don't do that, I think anything less of it is definitely a bust this season. I know that we weren't supposed to be that good this year, but still, you get to this point and you're invested. And if they go out and they lay a dud and they lose in the first round, I mean, Falvey and Levine are going to get a bunch of heat, and that's why I have them at a 7.8. They need to make a big move at the trade deadline. I don't know how many more times I have to say the damn thing, but they have to make that next move. All right, next one here, and the last one is PJ Fleck. Now, the thing with PJ Fleck is the way he ended last season, especially that win over the Badgers and that win in the Quick Lanes Bowl, it set the tone for 2019-2020. This is at a scale for me Through 1 through 10, a 6.8. And if it wasn't for the way they ended the season and gave you some hope going into next year, I would be significantly lower. Let me just run you through the record over the last 2 years with Fleck. Year 1 was 5 wins. Year 2 was 7 wins. Now it's time to make that jump to 8 or 9 wins. The Gophers were picked 6 out of 7th in the Big Ten West over this media day on Thursday. They have the 49th toughest schedule in the country out of, we know it's 130 teams. There is pressure on PJ Fleck to deliver this year. And once again, delivering Minnesota is getting back to the 8-9 win mark. You know, delivering at Alabama is winning a championship by 20 points. I mean, that's the way it is. That's just the reality of the situation. The Gophers have a lot of things going for them. Number one, their running backs, I mean, they have a magnificent core of running backs. They've got, obviously, Muhammad Ibrahim, who ran for 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns. They've got Bryce Williams, who was a freshman last year. He ran for 500 yards. And then, I think a lot of Gopher fans forgot about Rodney Smith. Rodney Smith got hurt last year. He'll be back for this year. He's a redshirt senior. Shannon Brooks will be back for this year. And those guys can definitely make some sort of impact early on after returning from their injuries. I think that the running back position is their strongest suit this year. They've got 4 legitimate guys that they can split carries with. I don't know how Fleck's going to be able to do it, but there's going to be a bunch of competition at training camp and going in to the first game against South Dakota State. Now, another part of this team that I really like is their receiving core. Tyler Johnson is a legitimate top 100 pro. And he's been the best prospect since Eric Decker, and he's been the best receiver since Eric Decker. He's got good size, he's got deep playability, and you know this young group that they've had, they blossomed last year. And I think that if the quarterback play is stronger, you're going to see Tyler Johnson put up even bigger numbers. And his sidekick is Rashad Bateman, who is a number 2 guy, another very good athlete, great hands, is going to make a significant impact. I think that they have one of the best duo receiver tandems in the Big Ten. I really do believe that. Now, the biggest question this year is the quarterback. Who is it going to be? Is it going to be Zach Angstead? Is it going to be Tanner Morgan? They've got 2 incoming freshmen that are going to compete for this job because a lot of the success in football in general is predicated on your quarterback. And if you don't have a guy that you can confidently throw out there and to go win you a game, and I don't think necessarily that Angstead or Tanner Morgan have to throw for 300 yards. They don't have to put up crazy type of Heisman numbers for the Gophers to win. Number one, they don't have a crazy tough schedule, and number 2, they have good enough running backs and good enough wide receivers where they can almost play as game managers. I'm not saying that it's, they don't have to make any plays. Of course they have to make plays, but I'm just talking, hey, if I'm PJ Fleck, I'm telling my quarterback, we need you to make 4 or 5 big plays, big throws, whether that be runs for a first down, whether that be deep shots down the field. You need to make 4 or 5 big plays for us to win these games, and I think that's where it's at. You look at the defensive side of the ball, you're bringing back Thomas Barber, you're bringing back Antoine Winfield Jr. The Gophers have a legitimate team that can win 8 or 9 games. And we looked at last year in the Big Ten West, and you thought, okay, who's going to win this? It's going to be Wisconsin. They're going to win the Big Ten West, and look who it was, Northwestern. Why can't the Gophers be that Northwestern this year? Because I look around at the Big Ten West, and it is average as it's ever been. Wisconsin, Nebraska, Iowa is fairly young. You've got a bunch of teams in the Northwestern. You've got a bunch of teams that are almost, who's it going to be? They're looking at each other. Who's going to come out of this Big Ten West? We know the Big Ten East is way better. We understand that. But the Big Ten West is up for grabs. And to be picked 6 out of 7th, okay, to have Purdue in front of you and to be next to Illinois is embarrassing. And that's not where PJ Fleck wanted to be in year 3, being picked 6 out of 7 in the Big Ten West. Granted, he won 7 games last year. This needs to be the year that they take that next step, and Fleck needs to deliver in year 3. He's at a 6.8 out of 10 on the Strom stress scale. Very excited for this Gopher team. I haven't been this excited in a very long time. So in review here, we got Kevin Stefanski on an 8.3 scale. We've got the Twins front office at a 7.8 scale, and we've got PJ Fleck sitting at 6.8. Brian Windhorst, he is up next here. He'll break down what's been